Hey everybody, it's Rebecca of Supergirl Radio. I'm getting this live stream started here, and I see Brian in the chat says, I can't wait to hear how part 3 came out. Well, Brian, I hope it's okay. If you haven't watched it, we're going to spoil lots of things. So be prepared for that if that is okay with you. Part 3 or this third hour or so of Supergirl Radio might be complicated. Well, we will have to see. Hopefully, Morgan will have all the answers for me, and all of my questions will be answered. And speaking of Morgan, you're there. I'm going to bring you in. How are you?
I have no answers. No answers for you.
I was really hoping you would come through for some questions like, why are there so many anti-monitors? I don't know anymore.
I started to get so confused that I created a notes for myself on my phone. None of these notes are like helpful in terms of plot stuff. It's just like dino thing. Very funny. But WTF, that's my exact note. So I don't know how good that's going to be, but I was so confused by this one. I was like, I feel like I should be writing down like the things that are causing my confusion, sort of my overall impressions, because there's so much happening in this. There's no way I'm going to remember it. And I watched this morning. So.
We should mention that Morgan often doesn't make notes.
Almost never.
So this is a rare Morgan note-taking session.
The fact that I made notes.
Yes. Which I also appreciated when we discussed Man of Steel, you made notes.
That's true. Yes, I got
pleased.
to pull up my notes. And
Thank you for taking that seriously. I appreciate it.
Hold on. Can we talk about Jonathan Kent together?
So when Morgan takes notes, it's serious. So I can't wait to discuss it. I'm excited to hear your thoughts because I realized today we often have to talk about Supergirl tying.
We do.
We do it too much, I feel like.
I feel like my RIP Supergirl subhead that I have on here should just be like a permanent.
She's gonna die in any given story.
I just feel like she's gonna die.
No, that's pretty good.
Just keep it fresh.
So, spoiler alert: Supergirl doesn't make it in this one. Surprise, surprise! With Crisis on Infinite Earths, but we will discuss it in detail. So we will go ahead and get started. You do have the doc, yes?
Yep.
Okay. All right. We will go ahead and get started to discuss Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 3.
McGurk! I love typing.
Not mess with my Google Docs, Meeksy.
Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it? Is becoming a human burrito a plus or a minus? I don't know. It does seem snug.
I mean, they say you are what you eat.
Kira. I love that.
So I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio, and one of our segments is Lena Luthor, Boardroom or Ballroom, because
she looks like a boss in this coat.
Nasty Luthor like a different Luthor? It's not just Lena being mean?
No.
Helen Slater here. So fun to know that you're hosting a podcast called Supergirl Radio.
Yes!
Welcome to Supergirl Radio, your source for all things related to the character of Kara Zor-El. My name is Rebecca Johnson.
I'm Morgan Glennon.
And we are live and wired on the DC TV Podcast YouTube channel and the Supergirl Radio Facebook page to discuss the animated film Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 3. I figured I would come correct to this live stream because I'm wearing my Darkseid shirt. And, you know, in memory, I guess, of Baby Darkseid. We'll talk about him because that was an unexpected
Baby
part of Crisis on Infinite Earths.
He's so small.
Yeah, he's so cute too. It's unfair to make Baby Darkseid kind of cute. He even had the Kirby crackle on it.
I get it, Barry. I couldn't have done it either. Look at those little cheeks.
So we'll talk about Baby Darkseid and the Flash and John Constantine, probably to a great detail. We are going to discuss Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 3, and I see Brian in the chat says, I haven't seen any of the Tomorrowverse. Everything I know about it comes from Supergirl Radio. Well, we hope that we can be the conduit to the Tomorrowverse for you, and that is helpful.
You're getting a lot of like confused information. It's like, man, so many questions in the Tomorrowverse.
So welcome. We hope you enjoy it and give the movies a try. Maybe you'll do better than we did with them. But we have given it our best shot. I feel like we have really given these movies a fair shake.
We went all the way back to the beginning of the Tomorrowverse, and we're like, if we watch all of it, it's gonna make more sense. This is user error. It could still be user error.
It could still be, yes.
We certainly tried. You can't say we didn't try.
We have given it our all on this one. Well, I guess we should get just right to it. So we are going to be talking about Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 3, and the YouTube description for it reads, quote, "Now fully revealed as the ultimate threat to existence, the Anti-Monitor, all caps, wages an unrelenting attack on the surviving Earths that struggle for survival in a pocket universe. One by one, these worlds and all of their inhabitants are vaporized. On the planets that remain, every time itself is shattered and, this was a weird sentence. On the planets that remain, even time itself is shattered, and heroes from the past join the Justice League and their ragtag allies against the epitome of evil. But as they make their last stand, will the sacrifice of the superheroes be enough to save us all?" And if you watch the movie, you'd be like, save us all or save us all, as the Joker asked. Is it just us all or like us all?
We're like, us all. One of my favorite line readings in the whole movie. Us all or us all? And Lex is like, leave me alone.
And the sort of button to that scene is Lex asking the Joker, do you really care which one? And Joker goes, eh.
I kind of want like this version of Lex's version of Joker buddy comedy.
Yes,
because like Lex is so put out with the Joker, and the Joker is just like, whatever, I'm having the time of my life.
It's the end of the world. I'm having the time of my life.
Like Lex and the Joker have to go on like a road trip, and then they have to like buy snacks, and Lex is like, what are you doing? You can't get 5 Slurpees, and the Joker's like, I do what I want. You know, it would be great.
Where is that Tomorrowverse movie?
Seriously.
I would be into that. So I guess speaking of Lex Luthor, so Lex Luthor, we find out, is hanging out with, I guess, the Legion of Doom over on Earth 10. He's been teamed up with Poison Ivy and Solomon Grundy and the Joker. A lot of Batman villains. Killer Croc is there. Two-Face is there. So he is hanging out over there, and Poison Ivy calls him a supreme leader, which I thought was,
when that happened,
that was extreme. She said she almost calls him Lex. She's like, and then she calls him supreme leader, and I was like, I'm sorry, back up. Supreme leader.
It feels a little bit like we missed something.
And they never come back to it either.
No,
nobody else calls him supreme leader in the whole movie. Just Poison Ivy in that one scene.
What if it's like, you know, like you play like a little trick on somebody in like a social situation. He's like, before they all got together for the meeting, like somebody took her aside and they're like, just so you know, Ivy, like we're all calling him supreme leader now. Like it would have been great if this had happened. She called him that, and he like kind of turned around and went like,
well, Joker's over there cracked.
I want to know what Solomon Grundy is contributing to the meeting.
He wants to remind everybody he was born on a Monday.
He's like, excuse me, and they're like, Solomon, no, not again. It's always the same thing. Is always the same idea with you. And I'm glad that you were born on a Monday, but that's like all we're getting from you.
Also, while we're talking about it, Sunday and Monday or Monday and Grundy do not rhyme. It's a totally different ending to the word.
He's like, not the way I say it.
While we're talking about it. But so Supreme Leader Lex has gathered the Legion of Doom, and they're talking about all those same things that the Justice League are talking about in terms of how to get rid of the Anti-Monitor and save the multiverse. And that's kind of I would say the first big portion of the movie. And I guess before we get there, because there are two different plans to save the day. One is by Lex Luthor, and then there's another one that they kind of don't see coming. And then, so we'll talk about that. But I think before we get there, maybe we should talk about the bleed, Morgan. So this is
yes.
this is a concept in Crisis. Where so basically after the Monitor dies, Supergirl, if you remember at the end of Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 2, Supergirl is mind controlled. Yes, that's the word. To kill the Monitor. The Monitor dies. His energy shoots out and protects the Earths in the multiverse by sending all of them to what's called the bleed, which is, quote, an unstable dimension that exists outside of the multiverse, and it's truly here nor there. Superman explains, and then I think Hawkgirl also chimes in to say it's a limbo, it's a lifeboat that sprung a lot of leaks. So a lot of crazy things happen in the bleed. So Morgan, what did you think about the time of the Justice League in this bleed dimension?
Yeah, I mean, it was nice that there was a like repercussions immediately for the Monitor's death. I feel like as a Supergirl fan, the fact that they were like, well, something very traumatic just happened to Supergirl, and I think that that's going to justify maybe one scene for her to process that trauma at all. Like, she kills the Monitor, and then she has like a scene with Batgirl later where Batgirl's like, so Brainiac was cute, right? And Kara's like,
that's almost literally what they...
And Kara's like, actually, girl, yeah, he was so cute. Also, I'm really sad about having killed my dad, I guess. Anyway, miss my hot boyfriend. I'm exaggerating only a little bit.
Only a little bit. And
Only
that's
a
very
little bit.
close.
I really thought, like, wow, the emotional repercussions of killing the Monitor for Kara are gonna be insane. And instead she was like Bridget Jonesing it. She was like, oh my God, I'm gonna be so bad and have a donut. feeling so bad about killing my dad. I'm gonna carbo load. And I was like, oh my God. Anyway, not exactly the direction I thought they were going to take that story beat in.
Well, I think the way you describe it is very accurate. But I think what the movie was trying to do was to lighten Supergirl's load a little bit. And they also paired her, I noticed, with Batgirl, who in Crisis on Infinite Earths, the comic book version, the original comic book, Batgirl and Supergirl are friends, and Batgirl gives Supergirl's eulogy when she dies.
Aww.
So when that happened, I was like, okay, I see that they're setting up their dynamic. So maybe at the end, like Batgirl, like remembers Supergirl in a meaningful way, and that never happens. So that was kind of a random scene to put. Not only did they not give Supergirl a really good way to work through, hey, I killed the Monitor kind of thing, and I was taking advantage of
about that, yeah.
And it unleashed a lot of bad things onto the multiverse. I really need to maybe kind of work through that grief and that guilt that I have. But I think they were trying to make her feel better about it, but that may have also not been the right moment for that. Maybe she could have had two different scenes where she dealt with the grief in a real powerful way, and then maybe she had a scene with Batgirl who lightened the mood.
I feel like there's a scene where like she's just kind of curled up in the corner at one point, and you're like, oh, she's so sad. But that I wouldn't say that that's like a scene where we got into. I just want to kind of remind everybody that like half of the last movie was spent on Psycho Pirate and his backstory and his deep emotional trauma. So it feels like there could have been more for Supergirl.
Yes,
this one is just the thing.
Yeah, the part 2 is largely Psycho Pirate.
Yeah, but Psycho Pirate, he had what a journey he had. But yeah, I was the pocket dimension thing was interesting as like if you kill the Monitor, all of his Monitor powers that were built up like created this space to try to like save the universes. I thought that was an interesting idea. There's a lot of ideas in this movie. So many things are happening in this one, but that one I was like, okay, yeah, no, I get that. Like I'm following this. I've got it. I want to stress this is early on in the movie, and that's maybe the last time I felt like that.
Well, and I think I do like the idea that the bleed is a safe haven for a little while. Like they can't, even Wonder Woman says it's unsustainable because it's an unstable dimension where dinosaurs pop out randomly and they have to take care of those. So anything can happen in the bleed. So even though it seems protected from the anti-monitor, there are consequences to being there. So I thought all of that was pretty good. I did have a lot of questions, though, about Lois Lane still using her smartphone. I know this is a real nitpick, but
I had, because I'm so glad you brought this up, because this is a big sort of a big thing that I wrote down in my notes. Like still taking videos. Why?
Oh, I also had that question because she mentioned how like, oh, this is going to be great for the Daily Planet. Perry White's going to love this headline.
Yeah, she said something about like this is going to make a great story, and I was like, for what publication? Literally, the world is ending. For what are you going to be like? Hold on 1 second. As
I've got to submit my article.
Exactly. Is Perry White like waiting somewhere to like publish this? I'm like, what? Like, literally everything's blowing up around them, and she's like, hold on, gotta let people know on my IG live what's going on. Like, what's going on here? Like, what's happening?
I expect that out of My Adventures with Superman.
Flamebird.
Oh my gosh, I was not prepared. Jimmy Olsen Flamebird on My Adventures with Superman, but maybe not Lois Lane here, because I was kind of confused because I figured like antimatter seems like it would probably knock out the internet, right? Like I'm not a scientist. I don't know.
I feel like we would be in like a sort of an end of days situation. I also had this exact same feeling later on when they go to a different planet. Or it's when Psycho Pirate is taking over everybody on, I want to say War World, but honestly, things were getting fuzzy at this point.
I think it was everybody in the multiverse, maybe?
Everybody in the multiverse. And there was like some planets where people were just like walking their dog and talking on their phone. And I was like, this isn't like, there's some people who are just sort of not aware that things are ending, or...
Also, they have a 5G connection still. Like
exactly. Yeah. Okay. All right. So sort of worse some places than others, I guess.
Everybody's internet is working just fine. Everyone has the bars. Maybe there are some people who have like no clue that the world was ending or the worlds were ending. They don't seem to have any kind of concern about it.
Yeah, I also thought during the Dino interlude, which in my notes says very funny, but WTF. I noticed that there was there's this like part in the city that is a portal, an open portal. And when the dinosaurs run out, they find a lot of civilians to eat right by the open portal. And I guess my question is, if you see a portal opening right in front of you and it's been open for days perhaps, why do you still buy it?
Why are you standing there? There are other places to stand.
It's like some of these guys are like in like business casual. It's like, dude, are you going to your finance job right now?
Are you still going to your 9 to 5?
Shouldn't all the like when they first show up, there's no civilians around. It's like an abandoned area, and then as soon as the dinosaurs come out, suddenly there's so many civilians for them to eat. And I was like, what just happened? Anyway,
people love dinosaurs. Let me just tell you, people love dinosaurs. So maybe they were curious.
Yeah. It's my boy T-Rex. Again, these are nitpicks, but they're like the little things in this movie that like drove me crazy, like drove me insane, where I was like, but there was literally just nobody there 1 second ago.
Yeah, the Lois Lane's still trying to do stories. I was very I really struggled with that one a little. I know it's her instinct. That's what she's good at. That's what she can contribute, and I love that about Lois Lane. But I don't know. Maybe she could have maybe done something where she was like underground communications or something. You know, she was telling people what was going on the world instead of, you know, like on a ham radio or something. She was like describing the events, what was going down, so that the other Earths could hear. I could buy that. But her being like, I'm going to get this a story for Perry White later. It's like, what?
I got to submit this later for the deadline. What if it doesn't make the evening edition? It's like, you're not going to make the evening edition. That's the whole point of it.
Yeah, so that was a very big nitpick that I had, but it's just a nitpick. It doesn't matter to the story. It doesn't matter to people's enjoyment of the story. It was just my personal nitpick about that.
While we're in the dino section,
Yes.
I wrote down in my notes, who were the guys in the trucks? LOL. And it turns out, because there's no context given for this, you're like, you either know or you don't know. They're
There's
like,
an
"We're the
Easter egg
losers,"
mentioned.
and I was like, oh, I feel like that I was supposed to get something from that, but I didn't, and it was weird.
So I have
my-
the answer. Would you like to
Oh,
know who the
nice.
losers are?
Yes, I would, because I was going to say Mind the Gap, actually.
Yes. Get to it.
Yeah, it said the dinosaurs and the losers are a reference to the late Darren Cook's New Frontier.
Yes. So I had to look up the losers as well. They are so the losers is a war comic book feature published by DC Comics. The name was later given to a reimagined comic book series for DC's Vertigo imprint. So started on DC, I think moved to Vertigo.
Okay.
And they first appeared in GI Combat number 138 from November 1969. And as mentioned from the chat, in the out of continuity 2004 miniseries, DC The New Frontier, the losers were sent to Dinosaur Island during December 1945 to rescue Rick Flag and important wartime information.
Okay, so they have dinosaur knowledge. They
Yes.
are dinosaur experts, if you will.
Yes, and I think the guy who talked to Lois was Captain Storm, the guy with the eye
Ooh.
patch. So I think he was the leader of the losers. Yeah, definitely. They gave a clue based on the dialogue that was in the scene about how Lois wanted to know their story. And he said, you don't really need to know our story, but I'm paraphrasing because we're a bunch of losers. So that was the hint of who they were. Although I understand that was setting up the name of the group, but it kind of bothered me that Lois said she's really interested in their story, and then there's never any follow-up to that. So, why would you? I know it was like a setup for that joke and that Easter egg reference, but it was just like, that's kind of frustrating to me.
I feel like there were a couple of those kind of moments where I thought that they were setting something up, like the Supergirl Batgirl thing that they never kind of came back to again. Which I feel like this movie and all of these movies really are so chaotic. Like there's
they truly are.
At every moment, 20 things are happening at once to you. And there's 100 characters. Some of them are just in the background. You're like, who's that guy? Oops, he's dead. And so it kind of felt like all of a piece. Like at some point you just have to like let the movie wash over you.
Literally sometimes with the antimatter wave.
Yes, exactly. Just like, yeah, take me. I don't know what's happening.
I will say, to this movie's credit, I felt like it was the least chaotic of all of the Tomorrowverse movies.
That is true.
But still chaotic. But there have been other ones that were a lot more chaotic.
Mind the Gap said the losers had a short that was included in the House of Mystery short, which is a part of the story.
Wait, is this also a Tomorrowverse animation short?
I assume so.
Did we miss one?
We maybe missed one.
Oh, no.
Listen, we got up on our Commandy lore.
Yeah, we at Commandy, like Commandy.
That's right.
And then also Adam Strange.
Adam Strange, we know all about him. We know all about those Zeta beams, which I put in my notes. In my notes, I said, haha, oh no, the Zeta beams are back.
Speaking of the Zeta beams, I know we're off a little bit of time. Well, no, I guess we're still.
I feel like we're in the spirit of the movie, if we're being honest.
So speaking of Zeta beams, it was my understanding that Adam Strange could not control the Zeta beam. The Zeta beam just came to get him.
Yes.
Whenever the Zeta beam felt like
that was sort of the whole point of that short. It felt like.
And now here in Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 3, they have used Warworld to harness the Zeta beam so that they can target it at the anti-monitor.
Mm-hmm.
When did that happen? That they can like now control the Zeta beam and when it comes out?
Yeah, and Martian Manhunter is like he like turns to Adam Strange and he's like, well, you're the Zeta beam guy, and I'm like, in It like that would be like saying like a guy who got hit by lightning twice is the lightning guy, right?
Like, he can control the lightning now.
I mean, he's certainly been there when the Zeta beams have, but I don't think he's got any like insight into them.
He was doing like calculations to try and figure out when the Zeta beam would come back. He was like on the chalkboard.
It felt more like a naturally occurring phenomenon in that short than it did like something he was controlling in any way, or that was even controllable. So I do feel like if we're jumping from like that aspect of that's how the Zeta beams work to, and then we harnessed it into Warworld, like I think I need like one more line of exposition about how that happened.
I will say, I like the idea that they used Warworld in a time of war. So that may not have been intentional, but I did think about that, about how Warworld was, a place that they had already experienced. One of the characters from that movie makes a return here in part 3, which I'll ask you about in a second, because I'm very excited to hear your thoughts on. But Warworld, we had already spent some time there. Martian Manhunter had spent some time there. So it did make sense to like see Warworld. Oh my gosh. Warworld come back in a way that seemed useful in a time of war. So I did like that. And speaking of Warworld, Wonder Woman runs into an old friend from her Western days. Character known as Batlash. What did you think about seeing Batlash again? He only appeared very briefly though.
Very briefly, but I was like, that's my boy. I couldn't remember. I'm gonna be honest. I couldn't remember what his name was. I was like, that's my boy. I think he's got like a silly name. I love his flower. Man, I love that guy, whoever he is. So I'm glad that you reminded me that his name was Batlash, and I was really happy that he made an appearance. I feel like the part in the old-timey saloon was so kind of random that they could have just gone heavier on Batlash, actually, to kind of connect that movie a little bit more. I was glad to see so much Warworld stuff kind of pop up in this one. I even wrote in my notes, nice that Warworld is coming back into this, I guess. Because it did feel like, okay, we watched all those movies for a reason now.
Yes.
Like, right? Like that one actually is contributing quite a bit to the story. Yeah. But I did feel like, yeah, like it was nice that we got like a little Batlash cameo. But I mean, I felt like there were some other characters in that saloon scene that like I didn't have any emotional like reaction to, that they could have just swapped in Batlash for, like keep him around.
Yeah, I would have been okay with more Batlash. I think it was just there for Wonder Woman to have a moment, because he doesn't know her, but she remembers having an experience with Batlash on Warworld. So I think it was just for Wonder Woman there. I guess while we're here, and we're definitely going to talk about Supergirl's big death, because I have a lot of questions about that. But while we're here, let's talk about John Constantine, because he is the character they go find in that Old West saloon on, oh my gosh, what earth was it? Where do they find him? Earth 18 is where they go find John Constantine, in the Old West saloon, and they have a little skirmish with the locals there. And they go there. Basically, the background for this is that Batman has had a vision or some memory of him interacting with old Barry Allen, who gives him a message, and so Batman wants to know what that was about. So they try to go talk. Dr. Fate gets involved to talk to John Constantine and try to understand Batman's scenario with old Barry. So, Morgan, what did you think about John Constantine in this movie?
I love Matt Ryan, so always glad that he's back. I was surprised that, I guess it makes sense that there is this much Constantine in this movie, because they were seeding him all along, even in, I think, in some of the actual other movies.
Yeah, but see, he was the homeless man who was like, the end is nigh, or whatever.
Yeah. He might have, I can't remember if he was in some of the non-crisis movies. Like he might have.
He had an interaction with Green Lantern.
That's right. Yeah. So it was nice that they brought him back, and he kind of played such a big part in it. This is how we get to find out more about Barry's like secret message that he was get like old Barry was trying to give to I don't know, Tarzan Bruce Wayne in the war world. So much was happening in war world.
A lot, yeah.
A lot was happening. Yeah, I thought that the setup and having Constantine be kind of the conduit made a lot of sense.
Yeah, so the way into that situation, so Dr. Fate does this like spell magic thing that connects John Constantine with Batman. They go into this different realm or whatever you want to call it. And it takes them through Constantine's damaged memories. And so they're able to get in there. They see that Titan's tower has been destroyed, that Earth has been conquered by Darkseid, which the Tomorrowverse people don't seem to know anything about Darkseid. So this is the first time they're ever hearing about Darkseid. Constantine puts so what I found interesting about all this is John Constantine, I did not realize, maybe this is just a Tomorrowverse thing. You'll have to let me know because you've probably seen more John Constantine than I have, Morgan. But the Tomorrowverse makes him sound like he is maybe the oldest character in the DC world. It sort of made him seem like he was very old and had a lot of knowledge.
Yeah,
And
I feel like that's kind of new.
okay.
In that, I don't know that he's in the other things that I've seen, and then that has mostly been a little bit of the Neil Gaiman series that I'm blanking on at the moment. And obviously Legends of Tomorrow. And he does seem to be like a little bit older, but I wouldn't say like the oldest character around. And it also seems like he kind of bounces in and out of hell at least a little bit.
It sounds like he's
yeah, you
been
know,
there.
It's not his favorite place is the thing. So yeah, I felt like the aspect of him being like, predating the universe, that's kind of more new, but the rest of it was like, very typical John Constantine stuff.
Yeah, so after in his damaged memories, Titan Tower's been destroyed, Earth's been conquered by Darkseid. Since things look pretty bleak, Constantine wants to clear the board and rewrite history. So he puts this guided spell on the Flash, and the Flash runs off to Apocalypse, where Flash unknowingly, he doesn't choose to do this. This was part of the spell. He infects a baby Darkseid with a poison that kills him. Baby Darkseid is very cute. And it made me kind of sad that he dies. But obviously, Darkseid, real bad guy. Don't like what he does. But Baby Darkseid looked real cute at that point in time. But what I found interesting about what they say in the movie is that Constantine calls Darkseid a fixed point in time who must exist. Darkseid has to exist. And killing Baby Darkseid actually creates two universes, one with Darkseid, one without Darkseid. And then after that, every critical decision created a new possible reality. So it seemed like, correct me if I'm wrong, that John Constantine, through his action of killing Baby Darkseid, he created the multiverse?
Yeah,
Is
that's
Constantine responsible for this?
It seems like yes.
Okay.
That's what I also got out of it is that Darkseid was a fixed point in the timeline, and by killing Darkseid, it kind of took out a pillar of the timeline, which allowed Earths to start well, here's the Earth with him and without him, and then from that decision, there's another one, and sort of infinite growth outwards. So it's the multiverse is sort of John Constantine's fault. Yeah.
So that was a new idea for me that he would have been able to create something like that. But I guess as the movie presents it, it's sort of you can make it make sense, I guess, if you want to do that.
I see. Mind the Gap says this isn't one we watched because I'm not sure it's part of the Tomorrow.
No, it's not.
Or I think
Yeah.
it predated it.
Mhm.
But Mind the Gap said in Justice League Dark Apocalypse War,
Yep.
Darkseid's forces ripped apart the universe. Constantine told Barry to intentionally cause another flashpoint. So there's like been a lot of Darkseid stuff apparently. I thought I wrote down in my notes, adding Darkseid is gilding the lily a bit. Listen, we already have the Crisis storyline, and I don't know if this comes from the comics, so I might be sort of out of base, but it felt like there was so much going on with like the Monitor and the Anti-Monitor and this and that, and there's like, and also As soon as they said dark side, I was like, no, you're not adding another. No,
No,
you
it's
can't
just
possibly.
it's just baby Darkseid. He
Like, just
doesn't
a
really
little
do anything.
He's just a little baby. I just thought that was like, okay, really? I don't know that it was necessary to throw in any version of Darkseid. Baby Darkseid I will take because he's so cute, but it just felt like a lot.
It was a lot. I guess they just really wanted to have Darkseid in their universe, and so they put him in there. And I guess they needed a reason for Constantine to initiate the rewriting of history and the universe. So I guess that's how they chose to do it.
It looks like, according to Mind the Gap, that House of Mystery connected those two universes.
Are we gonna have to watch this?
I don't know.
We will decide. Maybe we'll flip a coin if we want to figure out how to watch this. I don't know how you watch it. It's probably on some Blu-ray somewhere that
It's probably in the middle of a movie on the Blu-ray somewhere.
It'll be like in some Alfred Hitchcock movie, and time code 32 minutes and 4 seconds in.
If you put in the exact right code onto Max, it shows up in the middle of Beetlejuice. If you say Bloody Mary into a mirror 3 times, you can watch the House of Mystery.
We laugh about that because one of those, I think the Adam Strange short was like in the
No,
middle
I
of
watched
another movie.
It was the command. The Adam Strange was in the middle of the other movie. The Commandy one was unfindable.
No,
and
I had
only
to. I
you
had to
found
get
it.
a blue. I had to get a Blu-ray to watch.
Yeah, they didn't make it easy.
Okay.
Which is funny that those characters are such big characters.
So big. Commandy like had a couple of moments in this one.
Commandy had some real moments, especially in number 2. Adam Strange is like the Zeta beams, and Adam Strange play a huge part in this.
And I guess he found his daughter. What
looks like he found? He doesn't mention it. She's just kind of next to him. She
doesn't like, reference it at all. So
hey, Dad. Like they're working through stuff. You know, he's been kind of missing in her life. He hasn't been a strong father figure. I was like, yeah, great. Like, take all this time on the Zeta beams, but really skim over the fact that he found that daughter he was looking for.
Imagine if you had not watched that short.
I can imagine, because even having watched the short, I was like, what's going on?
Imagine not having any idea who that shirtless blonde boy is.
That's the funny thing, is that like the Commandy one is practically unfindable. Like I gave up. You, with determination and grit, managed to find it. But then to have these characters play such a big role in this movie, when you have to assume that like 90% of your audience probably hasn't seen their short because they couldn't find it. Like, I don't understand why they didn't just put all these shorts up in a collection on Max that was like, catch up on the Tomorrowverse, and then the shorts are in there, and then you could be like, oh, cool.
Yep.
Knowing that those characters like play a role in the crisis. Instead, they were like, find it if you can.
Good luck. We'll see what happens. Well, you will not be lost, listener or viewer, because we have a playlist of all of the Tomorrowverse reviews that we've done. So if you have questions about Adam Strange, we may not be able to answer them, but we will talk about them. And we also talked about the Commandy short with some screenshots. So even if you couldn't see it,
like me,
know what things look like. So if you have not checked that out, we do have a playlist available for you.
And I see that in the chat, Silhouetted Animator said, yep, you need to buy the What If version of Under the Red Hood.
I'm sorry, what is the What If version?
I can't know.
I know Under the Red Hood is an animated movie. Oh my goodness.
It's so much. It doesn't need to be this, like, you want us to watch it, right? It feels like they don't, is the thing. Like hostile architecture, like they don't want you to watch these shorts.
So at least I feel like now, having gone back over the course of all of our time with the Tomorrowverse, I feel like some of those movies that we went back to watch did help us understand what was happening in these movies, because after part 1 we were very confused, and we're still confused, but I think it helped a little.
I truly can't imagine like parachuting in like we tried to do on part 1, to this and thinking like, oh, it's gonna be like Crisis on Infinite Earths, like the comics. I don't need to watch the other movies. Incorrect. Incorrect. You are not going to understand things. It is not new viewer friendly.
Yeah, you would have had to have watched these movies and all of them, including the shorts. So we'll have to see if we can find that losers one, the House of Mystery or whatever it's called. We'll see if we can do that. I don't. We'll look that up later. But okay, so I think we've talked about Constantine. We talked about Dr. Fate. Did you have any Dr. Fate thoughts before we wrap up the magical parts of this?
I did like Dr. Fate. I liked that one point when he was like talking to himself and then he was like, sorry, just a habit. I was like, love that for Dr. Fate. This is not about Dr. Fate. It is about another doctor because I feel like I'm going to forget to mention this.
Yes.
But it is in my notes. And so I did want to read off that Dr. Light, who is the other doctor. Is it Dr. Light?
So Dr. Light is a doctor. There's also Dr. Elizabeth Chapel, who played, who also was Dr. Midnight. So there is the doctor who helps Bruce after he gets affected by the Scarecrow fear toxin. And then there's also Dr. Midnight. No, there's Dr. Midnight and Dr. Light. Yes.
So Dr. Light has been in, I think, at least 2 of these before. Maybe she was, I can't remember if she was
She might be in all.
She was definitely
all
in the
3
second.
parts. Yeah.
I did write down Dr. Light is a pure hater and I love her.
Okay, since we're here,
she is so petty. She is so nothing makes her happy.
She contributes nothing.
She's not helping in any way.
I have so many feelings about Dr. Light, especially in this part of Crisis. So
she's somehow the worst in this one, and like in the last one, she fought Green Lantern, right? Like she nearly kills Green Lantern, and yet she is somehow worse in this one. And God bless her.
Hear me out on this.
Okay.
So the big foe that they have to face, the Anti-Monitor, is created of shadows. And they talk about how they need all the light. And why is it that Dr. Light is not the person who offers the solution? She's not like, hey guys, my whole name is Light. This is the thing that I do. This is the thing I know of. She offers no solution.
No.
She's not the solution to the problem in any way with her light. She contributes nothing. Why is she there?
Those are all good questions. What she's there for is drama. She is there to be unpleasant to everyone. But like every movie she picks somebody else that like she doesn't like.
Yeah.
I feel like I can't remember in the first one she was like beefing with somebody, and then in the second one she's beefing with Green Lantern, and then and then in this one she's beefing with Lex, I think, quite a bit, and there's no reason for her to be in this movie. She doesn't really contribute anything, and she's just a straight hater in a way I have like rarely seen in media. And so for that I commend her. She's not part of the problem. I mean, she's not part of the solution, but she's definitely part of the problem.
It was just so funny. They were talking about Dr. Light would say something like, oh yes, we need to get a lot of light to defeat the Anti-Monitor. And I was like, I don't know, Dr. Light. Do you want to do something?
Somehow we need to get some light. Who could help with that? There's a part in the movie where they're like, we need somebody who can teleport, and there's like random character who, again, I'm not the encyclopedia of DC characters. She's just like, well, I can teleport across the street, but I don't really think I can do it. And they're like, you're doing it now. And she's like, oh no, Nightshade. Yeah, Nightshade's like, oh no, I don't really want to do that. Meanwhile, Dr. Light, whose whole thing is light, is like, yeah, the only thing that gets rid of them Anti-Monitor is light. Anyway, off to finish my Sudoku. Girl.
Why are you here?
A lot of questions. A lot of questions.
Yeah, I had a lot of feelings about Dr. Light in this one. Yeah, so I guess while we're kind of getting back into Lex Luthor, who he said something, he called himself like the greatest scientific mind of Earth 10, and Dr. Light said something like, Isn't that you? Aren't you the greatest scientific mind on Earth?
And he's like, "Oh, why? Thank you, Dr. Light, for noticing." I like the idea of Lex Luthor being like one of those people who like sets himself up for compliments. Like, no, I don't think I can pull off this color. And then he stares at you, and you're like, "No, you're pulling it off, Lex. You're really pulling it off. You're so smart, Lex." He's like, "Oh no, stop."
He definitely is that kind of Lex Luthor. So the greatest scientific mind of Earth 10 has come up with a problem to defeat the anti-monitor, and so he decides he's going to use Psychopirate to call the anti-monitor, and they're going to have a little meeting. They're going to set up a time. They're going to negotiate some parts of a contract, and they're really going to see what they can do for each other. That's how they kind of made it sound. But so Lex is dealing with the anti-monitor to get him to pop into some of these Earths so that they can study him and find out what his weakness is. Morgan, what did you think about this whole plan that now eventually brings in Supergirl? So what did you think about all that?
I mean, as a plan, it didn't seem like it panned out the way he thought it would.
Billions of people died.
A lot of people died. I guess they did eventually figure out his weakness, but it didn't feel like the plan necessarily led to that directly. I don't know, maybe it did. Things were getting a little intense at that point. There was a lot going on by then, and then it felt to me like someone was just like, what if they're like the light demons or whatever, like the parademons, or I can't remember what they were. And somebody else was like shadow demons. Like, yeah, they're like, what if he's like the shadow demons? And everyone's like, definitely that's what it is. And it's like, do we need to get rid of all those planets?
Is that what you got from the data that Lex collected?
Yeah.
Or are you just guessing at this point?
And then it felt like Lex was like, beep, bop, boop. That is what the data says. And like, is it? Is it? Yeah, it did feel like the data aspect was going to like to lead them directly to the solution. Then it was going to be like, oh my God, what a moral gray area this is, that we had to like sacrifice all these people, but it gave us something. And then it did feel like that's not exactly how they got to the solution. Like, so I don't know.
So at this point, we are now in another Supergirl radio episode where we have to talk about Supergirl's death. It's a very common occurrence here.
Happens all the time.
We talk a lot about Supergirl's death, sometimes multiple times in a story. One would say maybe 11 plus times.
Oof.
So there is that. This one just the one time, which
just
was
the once.
That's
fine.
That's better. So because of Lex's plan, they realize that they really need a lot of light, and the way to do that, correct me if I'm wrong, Morgan, this is how I read it, that they are going to collect the energy of all the suns in the multiverse. Is that what you got out of it?
Yeah. And so I guess another one of my confusions where they were like, when we brought the multiverses in, we brought them in with all of their suns as represented by this one sun. I mean, we don't want to have drawn like 50 suns. Like, we can all agree that would be too much to do. So it's all sun. This sun is every woman. It's all in this sun. Really, Whitney Houston deep cut. Yeah, and then that was the impression I got. It was like, this one sun is actually all of the suns. And I was like, how would that work? Exactly. And then I was like, you know what? Why am I thinking about this?
You're thinking about it too hard. I was wondering if Supergirl went to all of the Earths and like soaked in the suns of all the Earths. But
I thought
I
she
don't
just
know.
went into that one sun, which was every sun, really.
Okay.
If you think about it.
The metaphorical every
yes,
sun.
exactly.
So Supergirl is flying into the sun. She's and we should say that she steps in for Superman. Superman is going to volunteer himself as the Kryptonian who is going to absorb the sun. But before he gets a chance to do that, Supergirl flies in to step in and take his place. What did you think about that?
First off, I want to say that I really like I think my favorite Superman now is the other Superman who just like let this one take it and just like didn't offer anyway. Like, they're having this conversation. They're like, no, Lex, it's so convenient for you that this plan kills Superman. There are 2 Supermans in that room, and the one is like, "Okay, Lois, I guess I gotta do it." And like I swear they like look over at the other one. He's like, "Guess you gotta do it."
Sounds like the right thing to do.
Up top, Wonder Woman, am I right? This other Superman's not even gonna offer. I thought that was amazing. Good for him for setting his own boundaries. But I did like that, like, Supergirl decides, no, actually, it's going to be me, that I'm going to be the one who does it. And then it seems like it's like Superman tries to go like, I don't know, intercept her. And at that point, she's going too fast because she's got all the anti-monitor. Yeah, I think it was the anti-monitor had like souped her up with like superpowers.
The monitor, or yes, no, let me see.
It was one of them.
Oh no, it was the monitor who did it because he's the one who turned her into Harbinger.
That's right. I wasn't sure if the anti-monitor had given her some power like he gave some of the other people when he wanted to like do something. But yeah, no, it was that the monitor had given her the Harbinger powers. So her powers are even more powerful than Superman's right now. So even if he wanted to try to catch up to her, he couldn't, which I thought was like a nice way to be like, okay, here's the reason why it makes more sense for Supergirl to do this than Superman, even though we have extra Supermans.
Yes,
and we do not have extra Supergirls. But I did, you know, I don't like to see Supergirl die in things, but this is the famous thing that she dies in.
Right.
So fine. I kind of knew she was gonna die. I knew they were gonna do the whole scene where it's like, oh no, and like he's holding her. I will say, when she goes up to him, she's full of the power of the many suns that she either visited individually or all at once, unclear. And she's like, I outlived Krypton and I shouldn't. And so I'm looking at all these years I had with everybody as like kind of borrowed time that I didn't even like, I shouldn't have gotten. And so, don't be sad about me going. And then she's like, Clark, I love you. And then she passes him by. He says nothing. And I was like, Clark, Superman, it feels like you could have given like a little like, I love you too, cuz, or like anything at all.
Or like, you're doing such a heroic thing. Thank you for your great sacrifice or something.
He could have G-chatted her something. Yeah. I don't know.
This is also the Superman in the Tomorrowverse who like just took her to the Legion of Superheroes because he was like, I don't want to.
I'm just sick of you. So that did feel kind of character crazy. Like a very Silver Age Superman thing to do.
Very Silver Age.
See you later. Okay, I thought we were having a moment.
I thought we were family.
I wrote down in my notes, uncool for Superman to not say anything during Supergirl's goodbye.
Well, I guess she said everything that they needed to hear. I did think it was a nice moment. I think Meg Donnelly did a really good job of, it wasn't a real fancy speech, not a real fancy monologue, but I think it was enough in that moment for her to say goodbye before her big sacrifice in creating basically an explosion that blows up the anti-monitor. So she does die up in space and takes Superman's place. And that's very different from the comic book version of the Supergirl death. She dies saving Superman's life. So it's, I guess in some ways, there's a little bit of that she takes his place. But it, I think, has a little more weight in the comics. Although I did like that in the aftermath of her death, when Superman does cradle her in the very famous pose from the comics that has been redone 1,000 times, which is always fun to see. When he brings her back into the Justice League headquarters, everybody is quiet. There's a respect that is given to Supergirl for what she's done, but only for a brief moment. Only for a brief moment.
He like puts her body down. He's like so sad, and then they're like, I mean, I hate to be this person, and she, like with her dead body right in front of us, but like we still have work to do. Yeah, it did feel like it was a little jarring when like after that emotional scene, they're like, I feel like we just got to get back to it though. I know we're all sad and we can kind of work through it later.
Yeah, it has a moment, but only a brief moment, and everybody moves on pretty quickly from Supergirl's death. It's not really ever mentioned again
No.
either. That's kind of it. Superman does have a moment where he cries for her, which I thought was nice, and it echoes the very famous Crisis on Infinite Earths comic book cover where he's holding her body and like screaming. So there is a nice homage to that in the animation. So I did appreciate that, but it felt like everyone moved on pretty quickly after that. There was not a lot of weight given to the aftermath of that. And also, I was curious, Morgan, what you thought about the twist that Supergirl defeating the Anti-Monitor was not the end. There was still more for them to do. So, did you feel this is maybe a leading question? Did you feel like Supergirl died for nothing?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
She died for nothing. In fact, somebody in the chat, I starred this for later, Silhouetted Animator said, so Kara died for nothing, crying emoji. And that's also how I felt because very briefly after she dies and they have this whole like dramatic moment where she dies, she takes down the Anti-Monitor. It's very heroic, it's very cool. She gets to kind of blow him up from the inside. That's always awesome. After that, suddenly a bunch more Anti-Monitors show up, like dozens and dozens of Anti-Monitors show up, and then it's like, oh, well, we can't blow everyone up, can we? So where are we now? And it's like, yeah, it kind of feels like killing that one didn't do anything for us, and like, what was the point of it? Which bummed me out.
Did you fully understand why they explained that there were more Anti-Monitors? Because the only thing I kind of grabbed onto was from what I understood, I could be totally wrong on this. Somebody in the chat correct me, but it sounded like because the Anti-Monitor was kind of like eating up all the worlds, like anytime there was a world, there would be an Anti-Monitor to eat them or destroy them. Am I close? I'm
I
not really sure.
So I don't know either. So that's my preface. My assumption was that because the worlds were growing at such a rate,
It was like getting out of control.
yeah, it was getting out of control, and like the system needed to sort of right itself. And so these Anti-Monitors were taking out all of the other universes, like they all had to be taken out. So it was the Anti-Monitor was kind of the system's reaction to all of these worlds going out of control and there being so many, because the system was all going to kind of implode if they didn't start taking down some of these worlds. Now, with that said, shouldn't there have been way more Anti-Monitors to start? Like, why was there just the one for 2 movies, 2.5 movies, really?
Yeah.
And then at the end, it was like, Freddy Krueger style. It's like, actually, I'm not dead. And there's 10 more of me. I was like, what? I don't think I think that if you thought, maybe I'm just not thinking enough about what they said, possibly because it was thrown in at the last minute. And a lot of it sounded like sort of superhero science, but like, yeah, it didn't make a lot of sense to me, and I was just kind of like, huh?
Yeah, I maybe could go with the idea that like there were a lot of Anti-Monitors because there were so many different worlds in the multiverse, but I agree with you. I think they should have started with that.
Yeah, it felt like they decided to change the rules right at the end of like what was going on, which feels a lot like cheating to me, to be honest, like narratively cheating. It's like, yeah, if this was if the issue was that there were too many worlds and the Anti-Monitors kept popping up to destroy these worlds, then it would stand to reason that there should have been like more Anti-Monitors popping up. Like they should have noticed them popping up, or like maybe earlier in the movie series of 3, they could have had one of the Anti-Monitors get destroyed, maybe heroically by somebody else. Maybe Supergirl I hate to say it, dies earlier in the movie or something, and then they start popping up more. Like, or we could have seen an Anti-Monitor die and then pop back up and just assumed it was like, oh, that's got to be the same Anti-Monitor, but like it turns out you could be like, oh no, actually that was a new one. Like, I don't know, it just felt like it was sort of thrown in at the last minute, and considering that Kara had like just died to save the day. And then it was immediately undone. I was like, oh, that's not cool.
Yeah, I wish Supergirl's death had done something to affect change.
Yeah.
And it seemed like it did for a little bit, and then it changed nothing. There was nothing that could be done. The movie ends with them effectively giving up.
Yeah.
And then being
absolutely.
like, "Oh, we need a miracle machine to to do this, and we're just gonna have to all become prime versions of ourselves because
Thank
we
God
cannot
we have
save
this.
our individual selves."
Thank God we have this MacGuffin right here to save us.
Which I think appeared in the Legion of Superheroes a movie that Supergirl was in. So they did kind of
Oh yes, I think you're
set
right.
it up a little bit. They basically the Legion of Superheroes had this miracle machine that factors into the final plan to create what they call a monoverse, which is one reality and one timeline, not the infinite Earths, just one reality and one timeline, which is the reason for Crisis on Infinite Earths to begin with in the comics, is that they wanted to take all of the Earths in the multiverse and make just one Earth. And that didn't last very long, even though they did that. And I was thinking about it as I watched this movie. Like, Crisis on Infinite Earths is also known for the Flash, Barry Allen's The Flash dying, which really, I guess, happens, but not in the kind of the same way as the first one. And also, the big thing about Crisis is that they wanted to wipe out connections to Superman, so he would be the last son of Krypton. He would be the only one. So in effect, this animated Crisis on Infinite Earths did the same thing. They got rid of the Legion of Superheroes like they did in the comic book version, because the Legion had a connection to Superboy when he was growing up, and he was young Superman, essentially. And then they got rid of Supergirl, who was another Kryptonian. So now he's the only one in the universe. So I guess the animated version paid tribute to that in a way that it accomplished the same thing. So I understand why they had to kill Supergirl, because this is like her one of Supergirl's most famous stories, and she's famous because she dies this big heroic death. So they had to kill her, but then they also had to accomplish the idea that Superman would be the last son of Krypton, and then also they had to pay off the fact that she had killed the Monitor and she had a lot of guilt. So this is a way for her to redeem that and be a hero again, even though she did murder the Monitor and burn him to ash, essentially. So well, maybe not to ash. He maybe to energy power.
Crispy. Yeah.
He was crispy, and then he became energy that went out throughout the multiverse. So I guess her death did accomplish a couple of things on that note, but in the terms of the story, I wish she had died like finding the miracle machine or something.
Yes.
You know, something where, or maybe she does save Superman while they're out doing something in a real heroic way. Or maybe she does destroy the Anti-Monitor and it creates the ability for them to then create the Monoverse. I don't know. I just wish that her death had led to the next step of the plan working. But it didn't seem to do that.
Or even if it was going to end up being like a thing that backfired, where she blows up the Anti-Monitor, but like somehow that like dispersing that energy creates a bunch of new Anti-Monitors that they couldn't have known about. But it felt like it was like, oh, no matter what she did, or no matter what any of them did, there were always going to be 100 more of these Anti-Monitors. And so really there was no reason to do anything at all. Actually,
they could have just gone straight to the miracle machine plot.
Yeah. The other thing I see, it looks like Olivier in the chat said, I think Kara's sacrifice gave the League a little more time to retrieve the miracle machine, which I would agree with, except if it had been angled that way, where she was like, I'm going to give you guys more time to get this, like to get the MacGuffin that we need to save the day, and then she like dramatically, heroically gave her life, and you're like, okay, yeah, she did it. Yeah, that's why she did it. But she did it because she thought this was it and she was saving the day. And then it turned out that didn't really matter at all. That was kind of what left the bad taste in my mouth. I was like, oh,
Yeah, it sucks. It sucks because Kara thought she was saving the multiverse, and she didn't. And I think if she had done something to save or give them time to find the miracle machine, if they had set that up in the conversation between Supergirl and Batgirl, that I think could have worked. Because I don't remember them talking about. Did they talk about the miracle machine during that conversation? I do remember them talking about how Kara was dating Brainiac 5.
they definitely talked about that. They
Yeah.
talked about that, and they talked about how like bad they were being eating donuts.
Yeah, because it had calories.
But I don't remember if they talked about the miracle. Yeah, it feels like that would have been a good time to have reestablished the existence of the miracle machine.
Which was in another movie that you would have had to have watched.
Another movie entirely. Not only would you have to watch that movie, you would have had to, much more challenging for me, remember that it was in there.
Oh, almost what, 10, 11 movies later or something?
Yeah, exactly. It's like most of what I remember from the League of was it Legion or League? It was the League of Superheroes, right?
Legion of Superheroes.
Legion of Most of what I remember from that Legion movie is like vibes, like, oh, Brainy's cool. Oh, they like each other. Like I don't remember the specifics, like specific tiny plot details. Yeah, like 2 years on, I'm not going to remember that. So I might have needed a bit of a refresher. It would have actually been great to have them talk about it in that scene, and then you'd be like, oh, that's right, from that other movie. And then when they brought it back around at the end, you would have been like, right, because they talked about it earlier. Now, maybe they did, and I just missed it in that scene. But I don't remember it being in that scene.
They talked about Brainy, and they talked about the donuts, and they talked about how Supergirl knew what Batgirl was trying to do, and she was trying to like lighten the mood, make her feel better. And Batgirl was like, yeah, basically I am. Also, my memory is a little fuzzy on the Legion of Superheroes movie too. Didn't Mon-El turn out to be the bad guy?
He sure did.
Did he like betray?
He sure did. I remember that because I thought it was funny.
And there was like a monster Brainiac at the end who like became this like horrible like horror movie monster.
Oh yeah, it was scary looking. I remember that too. I was like, oh, we have body horror in this movie.
Yeah,
What's happening?
It was pretty gross.
What's going on?
So I kind of also remember vibes mostly from that.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like the one of my issues with these movies is that they kind of expect you to have like an encyclopedic memory for all the other movies, and they don't try to give you any help as an audience member who's maybe like tired and their brain don't work.
Or maybe you're just a big Crisis fan and you just want to see these 3 movies.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I understand that it is part of the movie series, but I did expect going into number 1, honestly, that it was going to be more standalone.
I thought so too.
I was incredibly wrong.
Yeah, we were
incredibly wrong.
We were caught off guard on that. So I think they could have handled that a little bit better, because they did, I think, establish the miracle machine in the Legion of Superheroes, because it was in that thing that they couldn't break into, right? There was a thing in that movie that like you had to find a way to break into this place to get to that thing. So I think that's the miracle machine. They put it in
like a pocket dimension or something.
Yeah, here in this Crisis movie, that's what they needed Nightshade for, which is a pretty good pull from the comics. So I appreciated that. Also, though, while we're talking about the miracle machine, Wonder Woman sacrificing herself for the machine, I have a lot of questions. Why does the miracle machine need a sacrifice?
It must have blood.
Did you understand that?
No.
So Constantine's going to give himself up, but then Wonder Woman steps in. She uses her lasso, and she puts the lasso down on the miracle machine, and then she and the lasso disappear. It like supercharges the miracle machine. So I
gotta be 100% honest. This is going to sound terrible. Completely forgot that she kind of died.
Yeah.
I completely forgot, because again, spoilers, I mean, for the whole movie, but like the last scene of the movie is like a young Diana like skipping along the top of the
Themyscira.
And Themyscira being like, oh no, I'll never die. And her mom being like, even a princess like you isn't immortal. And Diana's like, in your face. And so I completely forgot that she, in fact, even the scene before had just died. I don't know what that says about me as a viewer or this as a movie. I think I was so overloaded with information by that point. Also, this was like the 50th major character death. And I was just like, at that point, just kind of numb. I was like, uh-oh, there goes Wonder Woman.
Okay, so that brings up a good point. Another question I had. What did you think of that as an ending?
Weird to end on Wonder Woman. I'm going to be honest. Like, I love Wonder Woman. A little weird to end just on her. That seems strange to me.
It did seem strange to me because I thought they would more so. I mean, maybe this is how I would have done it, so I can't put this on the movie because that's not fair to the movie to say, well, I would have done it this way.
Yeah.
But if you were going to go back to one of the characters, why wouldn't you go to all the other characters and show that they were all okay? Because the scene previous to that is them just like walking out into the abyss, like, and then like zipping into this new earth, like getting sucked into the new earth. So like, I hope they made it. Like, I hope everything's okay. I assume they made it, and they're now just one prime version of that character, but we don't know.
It does feel like they could have had like quick little snippets. So there could have been like the Wonder Woman one, and then we could have seen like maybe just seen Clark and Lois like look at each other across the Daily Planet, seen Batman up on a roof somewhere, just like grumpily looking into the rain or something, muttering, "My parents." Just like check in on the major. I don't think we needed to check in on everybody, although I would have loved to see what kind of hateration Dr. Light was up to in the Monoverse.
Who was she targeting?
She's out to a boozy brunch and she throws a drink in somebody's face, and we're like, classic Dr. Light. But I feel like you just check in on the top three. You check in on Superman, you check in on Wonder Woman, you check in on Batman, you're good. I thought it was so strange to just check in on Wonder Woman and be like, all right, we out. Especially because I would argue that Wonder Woman barely has a storyline across these three movies.
She really didn't. She's found 8 months later after they're in the bleed. Then she is kind of there when they're doing things, but then her thing with the lasso is like the biggest thing that she does. Why wouldn't they check in on Supergirl at the end? Why wouldn't you establish
Supergirl's dead?
But why wouldn't you? Why would I assume that everyone who dies has a version? Well, or is it only the characters who walk to the Monoverse?
My assumption is that it was.
But Wonder Woman doesn't.
Oh, but exactly.
But she's taken by the miracle.
But she's taken by the miracle machine. So maybe she was just the first passenger down to the Monoverse, really.
Maybe so.
And that's what we didn't get. And that's why they were like, we'll end with her because she was the first one down. But like that wasn't clear in any way.
No,
so
it really wasn't.
I don't know. That didn't really come across to me. But I kind of assumed that the people who died in this version before they got to the Monoverse are just not in the Monoverse. Like, I feel like Barry's out, Iris is out, Supergirl's out, R.I.P. Aquaman. Well, I want to talk about the Aquaman thing later, because that was the moment where I had to like pause the movie and just like stare at my phone for a while.
Well, so I will say, and we'll talk about Aquaman, and maybe we should talk about the different Earths too. We'll bounce around on some of these Earths. But the ending, I remember watching it and going, that's it? That's how you ended this? I don't know. I just thought it was a really strange ending.
Truly strange. It would have made sense to me as an ending if like Wonder Woman was sort of the primary character that we were following through the storyline. So like if it had ended like this after the first movie and like we left off on Barry and Iris like in a park or somewhere, I would have been like that and nobody else. I would have been like, that makes sense because Barry and Iris are kind of like our like touch point characters in this movie. But it didn't feel like Wonder Woman had that big of a presence across these three movies. I don't like, if you ask me like what was her character journey across these three movies, I would be like,
she did marry Steve Trevor. That was the biggest thing she did.
She really didn't want to do that. and she didn't.
She didn't.
And
He died.
And she didn't. And
And
then
she gave that ring away.
the second he died, she was like, "Take this." Ew. Yeah, I don't know. It was so strange. And this again, I like Wonder Woman a lot. It was so strange to end on Wonder Woman. Like she I don't think she had a character journey. This would be an argument I would have for a lot of the characters in these across these 3 movies, is that I feel like most of them didn't really have a character journey. Like Batman was like, "Will I learn to love again? Who knows?" And we don't know either because he stepped into the abyss and we never found out. But
Okay.
at least he had something, right? He had
Yes.
something. He's like, "Could I make a friend?" It's like, I don't know. I guess you're starting to learn. Like some of the characters had some amount of story, but I hate to say it, I don't think Wonder Woman was one of them.
No, I would agree. I am curious though, if you were the writer or the director of this movie, how would you have ended it?
Oh, I think
or where would you have ended it?
I think I would have ended it just to kind of be like maybe a cop out a little bit. I think I would have ended it kind of like they ended it, where like you pop onto the new monoverse and you just see like little vignettes of the characters, and maybe they don't even have dialogue. Maybe we're just like watching Clark and Lois be like, "Oh, you're so cute," across, or working together, and then they like, maybe they brush hands and it's like scandalous. I make it into a romance novel in the last 50 seconds. And then we see like Batman, and like maybe he makes one friend, or maybe he like bumps it, like he like is showing Robin around the house, and you're like, he did learn to love. And then and then maybe you check in on like some of the other quick things on some of the other characters. What are they doing? Dr. Light at brunch throwing a mimosa. Lex Luthor like doing working hard at LexCorp, and then like getting a pop-up text message from the Joker that's like drinks later, clown emoji, clown emoji, clown emoji.
And what a vignette if Lex Luthor and Joker went to go get drinks later, and Dr. Light was there, and
Dr.
they
Light.
are the one she's throwing the drinks.
Yes, exactly. They go out to the bar, they bump into Dr. Light, she immediately throws a drink in Lex's face.
I want to see that scene.
Like we just get like quick little bites of like what everyone's up to, and you're like, we know that they're okay and mostly unchanged. That's I think how I would have ended it. Like you get a little, because honestly, all we see is Themyscira. We don't know how the rest of the world is right now. I don't know. It's kind of a weird ending.
And just going to Wonder Woman is like, okay, I guess Wonder Woman's alive.
I guess
she made it. That's great. Okay.
But what if only the person who touched the miracle machine actually made it, and all the rest of them just like disappeared? We'll never know.
They just they didn't make it to the Earth Prime.
They never made it.
I think I probably would have ended. I don't think I would have ended on John Constantine going with the Spectre. But I like the idea of like ending on them maybe as they kind of step out into the abyss going to the Monoverse. I think I would have been fine with that, because I know what's happening. I know what they're doing. I did think it was weird that Alfred was there. Like I spotted Alfred in that group. He was like walking. I was like, Alfred? Where did he come from? Where's he been this whole time?
Batman's like, if I'm not going, if my bro Alfred's not going.
If Alfred's not going, I'm not going. Yeah, so I think maybe you could have ended there. But I did think just going back to Wonder Woman was kind of odd. That was a weird choice.
It was a strange it was such a strange choice that I have a beef with the Max interface, which is that, or the Prime, not Max, not my beloved Max.
Oh, okay.
The Amazon Prime. I don't want to throw any shade on Max. It like sounds like my good friend Max. On the Amazon Prime, because I rented the movie on Amazon Prime, and at the end it aggressively wants you to watch a trailer or another movie.
No.
And I was like, I don't want to. I want to see who all the voice actors are.
Yes.
Like, I want to pause it and see who all the voice actors are. I am not kidding. I had to fast forward through the movie to get to the end 4 separate times, because every time I started getting through the credits, I was pausing. I was looking at that voice actors. I was unpausing. It would immediately throw me into another trailer or into a commercial. And I was like, no, not a commercial with something I paid for. No, sir, Amazon Prime. And so eventually, the point I'm going to make is I thought that there was going to be like an after credit scene because I thought that the end of it was like such a weird ending.
Hey, you thought maybe there'd be an epilogue or something?
There's got to be an epilogue. That was a weird way to end it. There's got to. I finally, after like the 5th time of fast forwarding through this movie,
you really made the effort.
It's like Amazon's like, please watch Lisa Frankenstein. I was like, my God, Amazon, I just want to finish this movie. I'm like sweating. I finally make it to the end of the movie, and it's like parlez-vous français, and I was like, what? There's no after credits. Anyway, that was my rant. But the point is, the ending was so kind of abrupt that I figured that there had to be like a mid credit, an after credit. There wasn't.
Well, speaking of voice actors, Rachel says, "I'm with you, Morgan. I always want to see who the voice actors are." I was curious about the Joker and Batman scene from Earth is 8 no it's Earth 12. So Earth 12 is like the Batman animated series and the DCAU and the Justice League animated series Earth. And in it, the Batman says, "And if it has to end, at least I go out like this, being Batman." And that obviously was Kevin Conroy, sounded just like him. This is, as far as I understand, is his last performance as Batman. So that dialogue actually is really meaningful in terms of his connection to playing the Batman character, that if it has to end, at least he gets to go out playing or being Batman. So I actually, as sad as I am that that's Kevin Conroy's apparently last final performance as Batman, that's a really, really interesting thing for him to have said. But I bring this up in addition to the Kevin Conroy Batman. I assumed that would be Mark Hamill's Joker, but in my version, so I got this movie. I bought this movie on YouTube because I sort of collect a bunch of movies on YouTube. That's where I sort of store my digital library.
And it didn't want you to see a trailer for Lisa Frankenstein at the end?
No, as far as I understand, no, it did not. But I was a little confused about the Mark Hamill Joker because I assumed that if Kevin Conroy was going to play Batman, they would definitely get Mark Hamill to be Joker. And it didn't sound like Mark Hamill's Joker to me. And
no,
then,
I don't think it was.
And then I asked our good pal Andy Babacked about it because I was like, what is up with this Joker thing? And apparently, Mark Hamill's Joker voice was quietly added to Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 3 after a while. So this article from Kotaku.com, which I'm not familiar with, says that the initial version of the movie had a problem. The Joker didn't sound like Mark Hamill, the Star Wars actor who had made the character his own in Batman in the animated series. Warner Brothers has now quietly stepped in to fix the issue, but not in time for those who bought physical versions of the movie at launch. So fans have been arguing about whether or not the Joker in it sounded like Hamill or not, despite his name in the credits and Warner Brothers promising that he was coming out of Joker retirement to reprise the role for his for one last posthumous duet with Conroy. Diehards knew it did not sound like the animated Joker they fell in love with in the 90s. So a new update from Warner Brothers finally confirmed that those fans were not losing their minds. There's a quote that says, "Due to a manufacturing issue, a temporary voiceover was inadvertently left in the final version of Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 3, affecting the character of the Joker," the company told IO9 in a statement. "Digital versions of the film have been proactively corrected and have replaced the incorrect version of the film in users' accounts." Now, if you had bought the Blu-ray, that's just, you're not going to get Mark Hamill on the Blu-ray. But I don't know that they've corrected the YouTube version. Now, I actually have some expertise in this area. This actually used to be my job. When I worked at Turner for 14 years, I worked in digital, it was called EST, electronic sales through. So what my department would do is we would package up digital files. So QuickTime, usually, I think I can't remember the spec now. Oh my gosh, it's been so long. It's been 5 years since I did that. I can't remember how we used to. I think all the
It's
different
fading.
vendors. Yeah, my memory is fading. But we used to send episodes and metadata, which metadata was like the title of the series, the title of the episode, the runtime, the description of the episode, the air date, the original air date, that kind of stuff. So you would send an episode file, and you would send metadata to Amazon or Xbox or Sony or Apple or whoever it was, the vendors that we had to send to. So we would send that stuff. And if you had to correct something, if you had gotten some of the audio incorrectly, or if it had a problem with it, you could just resend it, and they would then update it on the vendor side, so that then the correct version would go out. So I actually know how that works. YouTube, I don't think has corrected that, because I don't think the voice sounds like Mark Hamill.
Oh,
So somebody please correct the YouTube version. The YouTube version has not gotten corrected on this one. At least in my hearing of it. Maybe in some parts, I guess, maybe you could argue that it was Mark Hamill, but it just didn't have that Mark Hamill. His laugh as a Joker is very distinct. And so the fact that his laugh to me did not sound like Mark Hamill's Joker, I don't know. It was very strange. But I was glad to learn about this situation, because it made me feel less crazy to have heard about that.
that's nuts that happened.
Yeah.
I don't think now I'm so curious. I almost want to go back and fast forward to that part in the movie on my like Amazon rental, because I'm wondering if it was in my version as well. Like if that was Mark Hamill, or if that was the temp voice that they forgot to switch out.
The voice was good. I thought initially that it might have been Troy Baker, who had played Joker in the other parts of the movie. So I would have been fine with that, because Troy Baker's been playing the Joker for a long time. But I didn't feel like it sounded like Mark Hamill to me. But maybe I'll go back and rewatch it. But since we were talking about voices for the characters, I just thought I would mention that. Some of the other Earths that were destroyed but mentioned in the multiverse, Aquaman dies on Earth 146. We'll talk about these Earths, and then we'll go back to Aquaman, because I know you had thoughts about that.
I did.
There was a Super Friends Earth 508.
Oh, I was sad about the Super Friends Earth. They were so cute.
What I enjoyed about that is that Batman got a fax that the world was ending.
It's so good. He looks up like, what?
A little fax came into the Hall of Justice. That was
great.
It was adorable. And then Earth 12 is the DCAU Earth. Earth 10 is the Psycho Pirate Earth, where the Legion of Doom, I guess, was. So Morgan, let's talk really briefly about Earth 146, which is the Aquaman Earth. Share with me your thoughts about Aquaman.
I was surprised. I had some thoughts and feelings about this, because I don't understand why Aquaman didn't just save his family instead of choosing to let everybody die, including his family. Like,
I agree.
I maybe could have gotten there with this decision if not just even one scene before they had a thing where Batman got like sprayed in the face with fear toxin, and he was like tripping, and they were like, we got to get him back to the base. We got to get him back. He's wounded. And then they had a beam shoot down and take the wounded Batman up into their base. And I was like, cool beam technology. Really, that seems very handy. I'm glad that they have that. And then literally the next scene is Mara calling with their little baby and being like, so some bad news, Aquaman, like, looks like the anti-monitor is going to destroy our Earth. And he's like, well, off to die we all will. And he uses the beam technology to get into the Earth. And as he pops out, I wanted Mara to turn to him and be like, so you're coming to us, not the other way around? It just feels like maybe it should have been the other way around.
I understand that they wanted to give him this noble, like, I want to die with my family moment. But it seems like, and maybe you could argue that it would have been ugly, I guess, for the royal family of Atlantis to beam themselves out.
Sure.
And maybe not some of the other Atlanteans. So maybe they were dying with their people. But they maybe could have gotten a bunch of people in there.
I feel like
they should have tried at least.
feel like the whole premise of like Superman is that like the whole world is ending and these parents get their kid out. So like even if it was like he beams in, he was like, listen, I feel like it's our royal responsibility to like to die with our world. But this little baby, our
Someone needs
little
to carry
baby,
on the throne
yeah,
of Atlantis.
our little baby really didn't decide to make this choice, and so maybe like they just shoot the baby up, and then there's just somebody just has to wear a baby bejorn the whole rest of the movie, which I think would have added a sense of whimsy.
Alfred could have done something. He's used to raising a baby that's not
What
his.
if we just watched in the background of all of these dramatic scenes, Alfred like dangling keys over a baby? Like, how much better of a movie would that have been? I just thought it was so ridiculous that they set up like a beam me up Scotty system, and then she's like, I'm in mortal peril, and he's like, my family's in mortal peril, off for us all to die. And you're like, whoa, dude, I feel like you can save them. They just saved Batman.
Also, Mira has powers that I don't know would have been super useful, but maybe it could have been. You don't know.
Also got some fish powers. Her powers are arguably almost as useful as Aquaman's, which is not much.
He did talk to some creatures that came in handy to like defeat the dinosaurs.
The dinosaurs, and then he was mostly just chilling out in the background. I just thought
rationing
it was like,
water for the multiverse.
Yeah, exactly. Like, sorry, no water for you. I was like, oh, okay.
Sorry, billions of people on your Earth. We can't give you water. It's just not something we can do.
They also say something insane in that scene, which is like be respectful or something like that. And I was like, I mean, like they're all kind of dying.
You could be a little more compassionate. Yeah.
Yeah, there was like he's like, a lot of people have problems, man. It's like, God. Are we sure we want to put Aquaman in charge of this? I'm not sure if that was Aquaman
job
or somebody else. Yeah, Dr. Light gets in there. He's just like, suck it, losers. Yeah, that was one of the moments in the movie where I was just like, what's happening here? What are we all doing? What are we all doing? Feels like they were like, well, we want a dramatic death right here. And sure, like I guess he could save his family, but like, then we just have to deal with Aquaman for the rest of the movie. Felt so cold.
And then we got a baby in the headquarters.
I know.
Which again would have been great if Alfred, or maybe you could have had Black Canary and Green Arrow taking care of him. That would also I would have also been fine with that.
They just have somebody has like a little baby strapped to them for the rest of the movie. That's funny.
That's very cute. I think you should do that. Okay, so before we get into overall thoughts, Morgan, is there anything else you want to talk about that we didn't?
I think we touched on pretty much everything I remembered and wanted to talk about. We got all my notes. So yeah, there's just a lot going on in this movie, like so much going on in this movie.
A lot of things did happen. The only other thing I think we didn't discuss was that Green Lantern got his powers back. He got a new power ring, which came in handy. He also got connected to so I guess when Oa was destroyed, he like threw out some rings out into the universe to see what would happen. And then some of his recruits from that endeavor came to help him. And I think at least two of those characters I recognize from Green Lantern, the animated series. So that was kind of a cool Easter egg. The robot Green Lantern and the Blue Lantern I recognize. Maybe all of them were from Green Lantern, the animated series, but at least two I saw from there. So I did like that this movie, like the Crisis on Infinite Earths on the Arrowverse, paid homage to a lot of the live action DC shows from those various parts of the DC world. This one paid homage to all the animated versions of DC. So I thought that was pretty cool.
I remember seeing in the chat like earlier on this comment, and I don't think I started, so I had to go scroll up. But Silhouetted Animator said, how Razor and Aya, who came from the Young Justice Green Lantern cartoon universe, made it over to this second multiverse since Young Justice had Darkseid is anyone's guess. So I assume that those are the two Green Lantern characters, or at least one Green Lantern character who made it over. I believe they call out Aya by name when she pops up as a lantern, but I knew that she must be somebody, but I had no frame of reference for her. I famously don't care for Green Lantern, so I didn't know. I was just like, oh, I guess people who like that character are probably pretty psyched right now. I don't know who she is, but she seems cool.
Yeah, I think Razor is the Blue Lantern and Aya is the robot. So very, definitely very much from the Green Lantern animated series, which I would say is pretty good. I
Oh.
enjoyed it for what it was. It only lasted one season. Thought it was pretty good.
Short, yeah.
So I think you can watch it on Max. I'm not real sure.
Mhm.
But I like that they got an inclusion in here. So various DC animated projects throughout the decades made an appearance here, which I thought was really cool. They even brought in Batman Beyond with Terry McGinnis, got some time in there. So that was really fun to see the inclusion of some of these characters in these different animation styles. Even when they would go back to Batman the animated series, they tried to make it look like Batman the animated series. When they went to Super Friends, they tried to make it look like Super Friends. Even the Justice League animated stuff with Green Lantern and Hawk Girl, who were featured prominently in that
Oh,
sequence.
yeah.
And the Aquaman there was like the Peter David Aquaman with the, I think with the like the hand that's like the trident hand or whatever, the harpoon
Oh.
hand. Anyway, he made an appearance too. So it was neat to see that they used the style from the Justice League animated cartoon to do that sequence. So I thought all of that was pretty good. So overall thoughts, what did you think? Now we are at the end of Crisis.
Wow, we've done it. We really got through it. I feel like we gave it the old college try.
We did.
We we watched all the movies in the whole universe, including all the shorts we could find, which wasn't all of them apparently, but was enough.
How are we to know about that other third one?
It seems impossible. They certainly didn't make it easy. Yeah, I just feel like this was a case of like throwing everything in, and instead of being like, okay, we have 100 ideas, let's sort of sort them into, some sort of order and maybe edit a couple of them out. They were just like, I love all 100 of these. We're gonna go with all of them simultaneously at the same time. They're like, is there like an A and a B story? And I'm like, no, there's not. They're all A stories kind of at the moment, and then they're gonna sort of fade away. Psycho Pirate's gonna die, but it's gonna be fine. He's gonna be most of the second movie, and you're gonna think he's gonna be a much bigger deal, but he's not. I don't know. This one was so weird. I feel like this one was maybe the most enjoyable one. I don't know. I did like some of the Supergirl stuff in the second one, but there was so much Psycho Pirate. I just feel like this was definitely a case of like them having so many ideas and not editing those ideas down, and trying to include like every single character they possibly could, and all these like Easter eggs, which the Easter eggs were really fun. I loved seeing the the Super Friends and getting little facts and stuff like that. I really liked. I love seeing like Kevin Conroy as Batman, the animated series, getting those little like vignettes. I thought was cool, but I do feel like stuff like, hey, we're going to spend 15 minutes chasing a dinosaur, that stuff kind of came at the expense of like some character development. And the fact that I found myself going out of that movie going, like, why was the last shot Wonder Woman? She like barely had any character, had any kind of character arc over the movies. That's kind of bad. You had 3 movies. And the fact that I don't have like, if you ask me like what was Wonder Woman's deal in these movies, I'd be like, I mean, she was there.
She had a relationship with the Superman, I guess, of Earth. Too.
Yeah,
That's
there
kind
was
of
that.
it.
That was kind of it. Yeah, some of the characters had like a little bit more going on than other of the characters. It just felt like maybe, I know the whole point of Crisis is to like throw everyone in and see what sticks, but like it felt like there was almost like too much stuff. It felt overwhelming, all of these characters and all of this stuff, and then like the storyline itself was incredibly difficult to follow. Like really so difficult to follow. I felt bad for myself. I was like, oh my God, my brain's not good. I am just really struggling with this. Like the sort of the anticlimactic, non-ending where Supergirl sacrifices herself and then it turns out that didn't matter at all. That kind of stuff, I will say, that kind of stuff felt a little bit like par for the course for the Tomorrowverse, I hate to say. Like you would be watching a Tomorrowverse movie and then you just find out randomly that a beloved character was evil for no apparent reason. You'd be like, what? How? Why? And stuff like that would just kind of keep happening. So I feel like I was emotionally prepared for that kind of stuff to happen, but like there's really no reason for it to happen. I don't know. These movies have felt all over the place. And I think the context of watching the other Tomorrowverse movies helps, certainly. I would never suggest a person go into this movie blind without having watched the other Tomorrowverse movies. But I can't say I would ever recommend anybody watch all of the Tomorrowverse movies, which means I guess I would never recommend anybody watch this movie because like you do need all those other movies to kind of understand this one.
At least to know who characters are at the very
And like,
least.
yeah, like you would have to watch World, I think. Like you could skip a couple of them probably and still get by, but there are some definite ones that you need to have seen to get the kind of the context. And some of those earlier movies are also a little so. Yeah, so I feel like this one was just it was too much. It was everything everywhere all at once, but like not in a good way, like not in the way of that movie.
I think it had some heart in places. I liked the Supergirl Superman moment, even though he doesn't say anything in return. I did think that some of the emotion that they were trying to get out at the end before everybody goes into the monoverse was interesting because it did. I think they at least sat on the idea for a little bit that like they're giving up their own individual identities a little bit because the idea is that there could be infinite Supermen. And so when they go to the monoverse, all the infinite Superman are going to be now one Superman with all of their infinite memories inside, which I don't think really could theoretically exist. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But
I feel like your brain would just blow up.
I think your brain would blow up. You would probably go insane too.
You would. What if what we don't know is that Diana's the only one who's chill because she's kind of immortal. Everybody else in this world is going crazy.
Is
And
like
what if it like yeah, if it
like
pulls
Arkham
back-
Asylum.
Yeah, it pulls back from Themyscira, and then you just hear car alarms going off and like fires in the background.
Like the world is still a disastrous.
The world's very bad now, but Diana's doing great.
So I did like the idea that they at least questioned that they at least were like, okay, so if I go, am I still going to be me? Is there still going to be part of me in that Superman? Are you still going to know me? I at least appreciated that they thought about that they had conversations because that's a really heavy thing.
Yes.
Like, what if there were 10 or there probably are infinite numbers of Rebecca Johnsons like living in the world today. Like there's another Rebecca Johnson at the place I work. Sometimes I get her emails. So like it's very possible that there's lots of Rebecca Johnsons. But what if something happened and we had to merge all of those Rebecca Johnsons?
I got like the League of Lois kind of situation.
Yes. Like I would feel weird about that.
Yeah,
it would be weird for me. And it would be weird if like there were infinite numbers of Morgan Glennon, but like I knew this one on this earth. But then what if the Morgan Glennon on this new monoverse was somehow different? Like that would be weird.
What if there are a bunch of universes where we never started this podcast? Like what happens then?
There is an Earth where there is no Supergirl radio, and it's a very sad place.
It's a very sad place.
Everyone is very sad. And they're also not educated on the Tomorrowverse because they would not have had a podcast that would go through all these movies.
That's true. They don't know about Commandy. Commandy. I always get his name wrong. They don't know about our boy Rama Khan.
Yeah.
They don't know about Nasty Luther. I can tell you that much for free.
So I appreciated that the movie at least took a moment to have those characters think that through and really think about what that means and what that could implicate for their lives. So there were moments that I thought had some good levity, and I thought there were some moments that really took the seriousness and the gravity of the situation very much to heart. So I thought it handled some of the tones pretty well. But yeah, the first viewing of this, so I watched it twice. So every time we review something, I try to watch it twice. First time, just kind of take it in. Second time, make notes and kind of revisit it just in case I missed something. And the first time I was like, oh, what did I miss? What did I just watch? What did I watch? And then the second time I was like, okay, it kind of smoothed some things over in the second watch, but it's still, I don't know. Some of the Supergirl stuff definitely had some problems. So I think this was, to your point, a more enjoyable watch because we got to see some of the different Earths, and we got some at least some emotional payoffs in places that it needed to have. But yeah, I think on a whole, these crisis movies, very confusing and hard to follow. And I really hate that because I think, they had some really good voice actors in this, and and the animation I think is really good. Some of the action sequences are really good. But I don't know why they could not make it more cohesive. I don't know why. I don't know what the problem was, but some of it it was just uneven in a lot of places.
Yeah, I wonder how it would play if you watched all, and I can't say that I would do this, but if you watched all the movies like back to back to back, if it would play a little bit better as like one kind of continuous story. I kind of suspect that it wouldn't, honestly, because some of the movies feel very different, like tonally even very different than some of the other ones, and some of them have more of an emphasis on certain characters. This one was more of a kind of a true ensemble where all the characters got their moments, which is maybe why I felt like it was a little bit more scattershot, because at least like in the first movie was very Barry and Iris heavy. Even there was tons of other characters in it, but the sort of you were kind of following their story as like your point of view character. And then in the second one, for some reason, it was both Supergirl and Psycho Pirate. A strange combination, but okay. In this one, it was just like superheroes, and like you got little moments with each of the characters. But I felt like it, maybe it would have helped to have it be kind of somebody's at least emotional story was sort of, I don't know, even like mirrored by some of the stuff happening even. I don't know. Yeah, this one felt like it was maybe the most enjoyable to watch, but also the most all over the place.
Yeah, and before we get into snap judgments, I do have one question that I wanted to ask you that I forgot to bring up. So they introduced a Black Canary in here that we got to know. And she has a moment kind of towards the end when the Spectre shows up. Black Canary says that the Spectre worked with her mom, the previous Black Canary from the Justice Society, and that the Spectre was the wrath of God. Checks out. Good. I understand that. But then Constantine tells this Black Canary, quote, "You're in for a big surprise, love," unquote. I did not understand what that meant. Why would he say that to her? She was not saying anything about herself. She was just pointing out that he was called the wrath of God. So was he saying that she was going to experience the wrath of God? Or, this is a real stretch, but I'm just putting it out there, was Constantine making a reference to the Arrowverse crisis where Green Arrow becomes the Spectre?
That is what I thought, honestly.
Okay.
And I thought,
so
this is crazy.
You made that too.
Yes. Yeah. I thought, wow, that's a crazy reference if that's what that is. But I can't imagine what else would make sense in that. I don't know. That's what I assumed. But it doesn't make a lot of sense.
So if that is true, on one hand, it's kind of a cool Easter egg because Matt Ryan was also in the Arrowverse.
That's true.
But it's also bad writing because if you had not seen the Arrowverse, you would not pick up on that. So it would make no sense to you. Like, I'm even thinking that it's kind of a reach, but the fact that you came to that conclusion too makes me think that we're supposed to come to that conclusion.
I think it's supposed to be like a little call out to the Arrowverse, same way that they called out, like, characters from other animated shows, or Batman the animated series, or like the Super Friends. My argument is that those call outs are very obvious, even if you don't know the frame of reference. Like, even though I didn't know who Aya was, I was like, oh, she's got to be from something, because they're like, hey, it's Aya. And she's like, it's me, Aya, So like, you're smart enough to go like, oh, that's from something. I just haven't watched it. This really does. Like, if you are watching this having not watched the Arrowverse, that line doesn't make any sense at all. And there's no payoff on it. It's mysterious, and then it's gone.
Yeah, he makes that line and then he leaves. New Rachel says, I also thought he meant the Spectre being Green Arrow. Mind the Gap says that Spectre was in House of Mystery. He punished Constantine, which is that other short we haven't watched. And then Mind the Gap also says, I assume Black Canary did not believe Spectre was an angel of death. So who knows what that meant? Unexplained.
Just a strange,
hangs in the air.
Just a strange line that just sort of hangs there and is never resolved in any way. So maybe it's just that Black Canary didn't think that was who he was. Maybe it was a call out to the Arrowverse. We'll never know.
So I will say the one other thing I wanted to mention before we get out of here was that there was an Easter egg I did catch on to, and I think this is correct. Batman references a Robinson Park, and I think this is a nod to Jerry Robinson, who was an American comic book artist known for his work on DC Comics' Batman line of comics during the 1940s. He is best known as the co-creator of Robin and the Joker, and for his work on behalf of creators' rights. He was also inducted into the Comic Book Hall of Fame in 2004. So I think that's who the Robinson in Robinson Park was for, or at least that's who I wanted him to be representing. So that was another Easter egg I think I understood. Do we want to get to David's comment before we get into Snap Judgments?
Sure, yeah.
All right. So David in the chat asks, have you seen the new Watchmen animated film? And did you see the trailer for the Superman Christopher Reeve documentary? I have not seen the Watchmen animated film. I know of its existence. I have not watched it yet. I do like the Watchmen universe. I've seen, obviously, the Zack Snyder film. I've read the comic book. And I actually enjoyed the, I guess it was still HBO, or was it HBO Max? The Damon Lindelof.
Oh yeah, that was good. Yeah,
it was actually pretty interesting.
Yeah, I like that one.
So I do like the Watchmen universe. So maybe I'll watch the animated film. And I have seen the trailer for the Superman Christopher Reeve documentary. Morgan, have you seen these things?
I did not know about the Watchmen animated. Is it a film or a series?
I'm not sure, but here David says film. So
okay. It looks like it just came out like August 13th.
Okay.
And we're at August 27th. So no, it looks like it might be a two-parter. So I haven't seen that, but I might watch it because I do like, I like the Watchmen comics. Like you, I watched the Damon Lindelof series on Max. So I like Watchmen and the movie. I've seen the movie. I like that too. So I have seen like Watchmen stuff. So I would probably be interested in watching like a film or a series of films. I feel like I've heard about the Superman Christopher Reeve documentary, but I don't know that I've seen the trailer for it, or I've watched the trailer for it.
I believe it came out yesterday. So
then definitely not.
So maybe we'll have to. We could maybe do a Patreon or review of it.
Yeah.
Maybe. But it's definitely something that maybe we should discuss on Supergirl Radio. I think that would be a fun one to cover. Because it seems very inspirational, and I think that would be something good to check out. We did, as DCTV Podcast, raise money for the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation a while back, and just to brag on their kindness to us. Not only did they send us a handwritten personal letter in thanking us for raising money for them, they also sent all of the podcasters and DCTV podcasts shirts from the foundation. So that was a really nice thing. They didn't have to do any of that. We would have raised money for them no matter what, but they took the extra step to thank us in a really awesome way. So the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation are doing some really good work. So I hope that gets talked about. And it seems like some of that is going to be talked about in this documentary, some of the stuff that the foundation does. So maybe we'll, David, if you want to hang out with us at Supergirl Radio, maybe we'll cover that whenever it comes out. That would be a fun one to watch. I love a documentary film.
Me too. I love a good doc.
I mean, most of the time it's cult documentaries, but I'll watch an inspirational one.
That's usually the direction I go. But yeah, exactly. I'll watch an inspirational documentary as well. Looks like that is coming out sometime in November, this documentary. So yeah, maybe we'll put it on the calendar.
We'll put it on the schedule. Because we don't do documentaries enough. We did the DC documentary that talked about all the things DC. It was a lot.
It was kind of like the DC version of Crisis on Infinite Earth. Right? It's just like more. And you're like, I want to know more about that. No.
So yeah, it would be fun to cover another documentary. I think we should get to Snap Judgments. In the game of Snap Judgments, each person is presented with 2 options, but must only choose one. First instincts are recommended, and explanations are unnecessary.
Okay, our first Snap Judgment is if you were in downtown Metropolis during a dinosaur stampede, which again, I think we've established you shouldn't have been because you could clearly see the portal behind you.
You had time to get out of there.
Been there for days. But if you had decided that you also needed to get like a little Starbucks on your way home and it just happened to be by that portal, which group would you want to help you? The Justice League or the Losers?
I was gonna say the Justice League because they had more people, but after learning, and man, this is not anything that the movie told us, but learning about the history of the Losers and their connection to Dinosaur Island, I feel like they have an expertise in dinosaurs. So, I mean, they didn't seem very effective in the movie because they were just shooting them with like bazookas or whatever.
Yeah,
but according to the comics, they have. If we're gonna go just by like variations on the characters, I might go the Losers. It seems like they have a lot of dinosaur experience.
Yeah, I'm also going to go to the Losers because of their dinosaur experience. They came in like Jurassic Park, like they're like, no, we got this. We know how to do this. And so I think the Justice League has more firepower, but just on like pure expertise level, I think that the Losers are going to have to take this. All right. If you could spend more time on another Earth in this movie, which one would you rather have seen more from? Earth 508, that's the Super Friends Earth, or Earth 12, the DC animated universe with Batman the Animated Series and the Justice League Animated Series?
I love the DCAU, but after seeing Batman get that fax in the Hall of Justice, I was like, I want to know more about this version of the Super Friends. How would the Super Friends have dealt with Crisis? That's what I want to know.
I feel like they would have had this whole thing sewn up very quickly. I also, listen, I love Batman the Animated Series, but again, those Super Friends were so cute. They look so happy and colorful. I'm gonna go Earth 508. I'm gonna go hang out with the Super Friends. The fax machine was called something funny too. It was like a good joke, and it
was something alert. I can't remember.
Trouble alert or something like that.
Yeah.
Like the word trouble was kind of like cut off or something.
I think it's like maybe a big L that looked like a line, like one of those, like I don't know. Yeah, you're right.
But it was amazing, and I like that it had a funny name, and I love them and their fax machine. So yeah, I would go hang out and send Batman faxes in that universe.
I think the Wonder Twins could have really come in
If they
clutch.
activated, I think that we would have had this. I think maybe this could have been like even a 1 or 2 movie.
Yeah, I think it would have been in one part.
Yeah,
The Super
exactly.
Friends would have taken care of it.
Don't need two additional parts for that. Our last snap judgment. Which Tomorrowverse character were you happier to see come back? Adam Strange, Commandy, or Batlash?
I did love the reappearance of Batlash, unexpected. But I will say that Commandy, I got really attached to Commandy because I watched the shorts. I learned a lot about Commandy's history. And I was glad to see he had like a cathartic end.
Yeah.
You know, he found out that his world was destroyed, but it was a bunch of like crazy creatures. So like,
One of my favorite parts is like they're like, "There goes your world, Commandy," and he was like, "It kind of sucks anyway." They're like, "You're right, Commandy. Don't be sad about it." He's like, "I'm not sad about it. It's mostly just mean ape people." It's
it was
cool."
kind of horrific. I was there by
I kind of
myself.
hated it. It's really great.
But I felt like Commandy had a future there on that. You know, it was a different thing for him. He could go be part of the world. So I felt like Commandy had he actually was one of the few characters I feel like in his appearances in the Tomorrowverse did have some kind of arc that got him from point A to point B. So I'm gonna go Commandy on this one.
I'm also gonna go Commandy. You know, I think it's actually much funnier because I did not get to watch that short.
Somehow you were still attached to him.
I watched both of the other things that those other people. I watched the Batlash, I watched the War World movie, and I watched the Adam Strange short. And I was still more attached to the guy I just heard about in still images. So take that what you will. But I feel like I learned a lot about Commandy and your sort of like PowerPoint presentation and everything. I like the Commandy, maybe even more than a lot of the characters, even the bigger characters in this series of movies, goes through like a whole character journey where he like learns to like let go of his prejudice towards ape people. Like, listen, nobody else is having that kind of emotional journey in these series of movies. And then at the end, he's like, I get to be like a real boy with all human people. And then, like, the guy I can't remember who he's talking to at the moment, but that guy's so mean because he's like, maybe if that's where you end up, Commander, maybe you'll end up back in time with just the ape. With just the dinosaurs, and Commandy's like, okay, better guess it's better than this. Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I just love his like Commandy has like an indomitable spirit.
He does. He really
I just really like his character progression over these movies.
He's very good. All right. Well, I think that will take us out of Snap Judgments. No judgments on your Snap Judgments. Turns out in the chat, Mind the Cap says the losers died confronting the dinosaurs. So maybe the Justice League is a better choice.
I think
that would have been good information to know.
They did not made the wrong choice.
All right,
it's a bummer for them.
That's good to know. I'm glad we have that information. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Supergirl Radio. If you would like to contact us, you can post a comment on our website at supergirlradio.com. You can email us at supergirlradio@gmail.com. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on X and Instagram, all at Supergirl Radio. And if you like what we do, we encourage you to give us a rating and write us a review on Apple Podcasts. And Supergirl Radio is part of the DC TV Podcast and Multiverse of Color Network, so definitely give those a look. You can hang out with us as we go live and wired on Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern on the DC TV Podcast YouTube channel. And DC TV Podcast also has a TeePublic store, so if you're in need of some new DC or DC TV or Tomorrowverse or Crisis related t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, magnets, tote bags, pens, phone cases, pillows, or stickers, go to supergirlradio.com and click on the TeePublic store link at the top of the page.
And we have some Crisis designs in the DC TV podcast TeePublic store that we would like to suggest.
That is kind of a lot to say.
A tongue twister.
But we do have a really cool design from Comic Girl. So if you are interested in Sarah Louver's design, it says everyone's having an existential crisis. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
It's so good.
So if you in the Crisis on Infinite Earths font, so that's one of my favorite designs that we have in the T Public store because it really applies to the DC comic book side of you,
But
perhaps,
also your everyday life.
but also your everyday life if you're actually going through a personal crisis. So, so it works both ways if you are into that kind of thing. We would also like to thank our legion of super sponsors for supporting the Supergirl Radio Patreon. These people are Michael, Anne-Marie, Yvonne, Nicola, Abby, Miriam, Nicole, Brian, Ethan, Danny, Majuba, Zachary, Annie, and Rachel. And if you'd like to become a legion of super sponsor, you can go to patreon.com/Supergirl Radio. And we have some various reviews and things that we have talked about recently. We talked about the Roswell pilot. We had a pilot pod
did.
to talk about Jason Behr. Still keeping it tight.
Keeping it tight. He looks just as good now as he did then.
So that was actually fun. I got to ask all of my Roswell questions to Morgan, and Morgan filled in a lot of context there.
I got like really far deep down the rabbit hole of like scheduling how Roswell popped from network to network and exactly when. I was deep into a Wikipedia, just like and then it moved to UPN, Rebecca. And like, so if these are the things that you've always wanted to know about, like, you know, the early 2000s teen television, listen, that Roswell Pilot Pod is going to be the episode for you on our Patreon.
It's good information for me to know because Jason Behr is actually going to be at DragonCon this week that I am going to. So I will not only carry the Zor-El characterization from Supergirl that he portrayed, but he was also.
But now Max.
Yeah, also Roswell.
That's a good segue into, I saw in the chat, Stanley asks, are you excited for DragonCon?
I actually really am, because I'm making a personal goal of mine to do some street photography this week,
Ooh.
and I'm taking 5 cameras.
Oh wow, that's a lot.
I'm taking my DSLR. I'm taking my brother's old film camera, which is something I have not experimented with yet, so I'm going to play around with that. Then I'm also going to be taking my other 35 millimeter camera, my Ilford Sprite 35-2, very specifically the 35-2. I haven't played around with that too much, so I'm going to goof around with that. Then I also ordered this week a Kodak Printomatic, which is an instant print camera that you can also take digital pictures with. So those plus my iPhone. I guess I'm going to count that as another camera. So I'm hoping to do some street photography and just play around with my cameras and see how things go. I'll probably go to some panels. I'm going to be on 2 panels. There's going to be a Rebel Moon panel. That should be a lot of fun. Actually, I've been watching the first part. I'm like catching up on the director's cuts for the panel. So I'm like coming in with all the information. The director's cuts are actually really good. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised. All of Zack Snyder's director's cuts are always way better. But I'm like, why didn't they just release this one? This is so much better.
Yeah, why not just do the one? I don't really understand.
Just do the one. But yeah, so I'm catching up on that because I'm doing a Rebel Moon panel, but I'm also doing a Lex Luthor panel, which I'll record and release for Supergirl Radio for everybody to hear. But it's going to be with Michael Bailey, a friend of the podcast, a friend of Supergirl Radio. He is with the Superman homepage. He does the Fortress of Bailey 2 podcast. Superman expert, knows everything about Superman. And we're doing a Battle of the Lexes panel. Where we did this with Superman a couple of years ago, where they would throw out categories. Like for Superman, it was like, who has the best suit? And then you would sort of debate on who had the best Superman suit, or who was the best Clark Kent. And you would talk about that. And the idea was you would eventually like narrow it down to like who was the best Superman, but that never happened. Everybody like said a whole bunch of different things. So I think it's the same premise as like who had the, I don't know what the categories are, like who had the best Lex Luthor voice, who had the best Lex Luthor look, who was the best criminal mastermind or whatever. So I think it's going to be something similar. So that should be a lot of fun. I've been prepping, like rewatching Lex Luthor stuff to really kind of get my mind. I finished Titans season 4 because Lex Luthor for one episode and he dies like a chump, and I was really disappointed.
Well, he's not gonna win.
And he was played by the man in black from Lost.
No.
And he dressed in all black, which I thought was a lost Easter egg because he was the man in black.
That's
But
crazy.
but yeah, so he kind of died a little wimpy on Titan. But Titan season 4 very good. Other
Yeah.
than the Lex dying thing was very good. Anyway, all that to say, I have 2 panels that I'm going to be on, but I'm also going to do some other stuff. So check my Instagram, which I guess I should segue into. If you would like to follow me on social media to see the things that I'm doing at DragonCon, you can follow me on several places. I'm on Vero True Social at Derby Kid. I'm on Instagram at the Derby Kid. I will be posting those pictures that I take. I'll probably be able to take my DSLR and the stuff in the Printomatic to Instagram fairly quickly, but the film I'm going to have developed. So we'll see how that comes out. Who knows what that'll look like? It'll probably be garbage, but we'll see. Maybe I'll have 1 or 2 shots that are going to be pretty good. I've also been publishing some interviews that I'm doing with other Snyder fans, because if you're new to Supergirl Radio, this is something you need to know about me. I'm a big Zack Snyder fan, so I've been talking with some other fans like me about why they like Zack Snyder films and what their favorite films are, and I've been asking all of them the question, what is art? So I've been trying to figure out the the eternal answer to that question, which of course is technically paintings of horses.
Of course.
But I'm seeing what other people may define it as. But you can see those interviews at youtube.com/duckmilkprod. I actually just recently published one with Dave Jones, who's friend of Supergirl Radio. He's been on Supergirl Radio a couple of times. And he gave actually a pretty good answer to what is art. So if you want to head over to my YouTube channel, you can check it out.
And you can check me out on Twitter and Instagram at Mojotastic, and also as a co-host on the Legendary Ladies podcast, where we just did a pilot pod for Interview with the Vampire, the AMC show that just made its way over to Netflix. So if you want to check that out, we got like a lot of comments on that. Apparently there's a big fandom for this, which is not surprising because those books have been out for so long. And like all the Anne Rice books have been out for so long, but it was really fun to watch that pilot, because I got a little bit into the show. I didn't finish the whole first season, but I have to go back and rewatch it. So it was like fun to rewatch the pilot again. And I think this week we're going to go in a very completely different direction and watch the first episode of Emily in Paris. So you know, if your tastes run somewhere between Interview with the Vampire and Emily in Paris, we got you covered. That's the thing.
Are there any connecting points? What's Emily in Paris?
I wish that would be very funny. It's like, actually, Emily this whole time was a vampire.
Is it a time period thing?
No, Emily's just in Paris. I think the whole thing is that she just really likes Paris. But I'm gonna find out this week, I think.
I can't remember what Lestat is. He's not French.
He might be. The name is certainly.
I'm not sure. I can't remember. I'm only familiar with the Tom Cruise version of
Yes, I was referencing the Tom Cruise version a lot, because that was like, I never read the books. So that was also my point of reference, where I was like, well, this is the part where Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt. Tom Cruise in a sort of a goofy wig. So yeah, that was sort of the extent of my Interview with the Vampire knowledge. But it seems like they are a little, I don't know if they're more faithful to the books, but they are certainly not. They're certainly like a little veering a little bit off of like the movie, because I was like, oh, I remember what, you know, when like the girl shows up and stuff like that. But then they sort of took it in a different direction, where one of the characters is like from New Orleans, and there's all sort of the backstory. So it's a really interesting, like, if they were going to redo it, like they kind of redid it in a way that was like interesting, where they're like bringing something
fresh.
new. Yeah, exactly. It's like, I kind of don't want to see the same thing over and over and over again. So I'm glad that they like went in a different direction, and apparently people really like it, because we got so many like way more comments than I expected on our YouTube video. We were all like, whoa, what's going on? So if you want to go check that out, it's on the Legendary Ladies podcast on YouTube.
I would not be surprised if there were vampires in Nolans.
I bet there would be.
I'm sure there are. There probably are some down there.
I went on a ghost tour one time of New Orleans, and it was great, honestly. It was like 1 or 2 days before a hurricane hit and trapped us into a bed and breakfast from the 1800s, where the proprietors of this bed and breakfast left to go home, and
They weren't staying for the storm.
it was like maybe like a more of a like a locals only bed and breakfast, and so all of the locals also went home. So it was just me and my friend in this 1800s bed and breakfast during a hurricane at like a day after a ghost tour. So anyway, I was pretty scared. But we made it. We survived.
You are here to
Or
tell
did
the
we?
tale.
Dun dun dun.
Yes, so that is great. I'm glad you made it.
Thank
Interesting. The interview with the vampire is making a comeback. I shouldn't be surprised. Everything is a remake these days.
It's true. What's old is new again. That
It-
is that is true.
History does repeat itself or rhyme, as some people say. Well, I guess that's going to do it for this episode of Supergirl Radio. But until next time, I'm still Rebecca Johnson.
And I'm still Morgan Glennon, and we're glad the crisis is over.
McGurk! I love
Not mess
typing.
with my Google Docs, Meeksy.
Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it? Is becoming a human burrito a plus or a minus? I don't know. It does seem snug.
I mean, they say you are what you eat.
I love that.
So I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio, and one of our segments is 𝙁𝙪𝙨𝙩𝙞𝙀🙗 Boardroom or Ballroom, because
She looks like a boss in this coat.
Is Nasty Luther like a different Luther? It's not just Lena being mean?
Helen Slater here. So fun to know that you're hosting a podcast called Supergirl Radio.
Yeah!